Well, welcome to the Pinball Haus. My name is Babak. I've been running the Pinball Haus now for 6 months, but I've been into pinballs for the last 10 years, building them, repairing them, selling spare parts, and I just love pinballs. So I thought I start a pure pinball arcade here in Brisbane, and that's what I do.
Pinball is something most of us probably associate with the 80s and 90s, but the culture is making a big comeback and has a surprisingly large dedicated following of younger players. Brisbane is the pinball capital of the Southern Hemisphere and home to some of the highest ranking players in the world. So how is this game competing with the newer technologies, and what about it keeps younger players coming back over and over again? Thanks so much for letting us into your space. What first comes to mind when you think of pinball?
When I think about pinball, I think it's real. It's a real game. When I play it, there's something really moving around and smashing into things. It's not just a screen make-believe. And when I play it, I'm physically involved, and that's why I love it. We really get a broad range of customers here. We get the dad with his younger child, well, the dad obviously played it when he was young, and now he has a 10-year-old that's been introduced to the pinball. We get families, we get older guys that used to play them when they were young, but we get a lot of guys and girls in their 20s, mid-20s. They're the tweens, and they're really getting into it. That's probably the biggest growth area, are players in their mid-20s. The first pinball that I really remember was when I was probably 15 at a pub, and it was a baseball pinball machine. And I remember it so well because we put in some money, and if we would shake the machine, it would give us 3 games. So you can imagine, we just spent there all night just playing and shaking and getting more and more games.
What do you think about the future of pinball as an industry?
Pinballs are developing now quite strongly because of the big influx in players and competition and the rekindled interest in pinball. Machines are being produced again and are getting quite modernized and sophisticated. And the next generation of pinballs that's hitting the market now has quite complex screens. They got full LCD screens that tell you a story and tell you what to do, and there are video modes incorporated in the games. So it's quite exciting what we see there, and it's very exciting to see that there are new manufacturers coming on the market bringing out pinballs. Here, have a look. This is the latest machine. It just arrived, and this is like state-of-the-art, ultra-modern Houdini, this incredible light show, and a pleasure to play.
I'd say the first game I ever played would have been when I was a kid, about like 5 or 6 years old. I played in Indiana Jones in an ice skating rink. So it was pretty good, yeah, I loved it. But the only problem was, like, back then I didn't really know what I was doing with pinball, because I was just like, oh, it's fun, it's a pinball, like, hey, like flippers and the ball does a thing, and oh, cool. But yeah, so back then I was pretty horrible at it, but now, like, since I've gotten into it more, like, I've sort of learned how they work and function, kind of thing. I would say my favorite game of all time would actually be The Getaway. I've played it, like, as well since I was a kid, kind of thing, and like whenever I've seen one out and about, I always have to have a game, and like even playing it on like pinball emulators on computers and that kind of thing, still find it pretty fun.
Can we have a look inside a machine?
Here you see the underneath of a play field. Here are the coils for the flipper mechanisms. Here you see the light board, over 100 lamps just for the play field. And embedded here, you see little switches. So we got switches, coils, lights, and things like drop targets, which are again driven by coils. Everything that moves is driven by a coil.
Could you ever pick a favorite game?
What is my favorite? That's a very tough question, and I always answer that by saying, what would you answer if somebody would ask you, what's your favorite child? Well, you love them all, and I love all my machines.